It's a constant battle not to think, I'll just work harder. I'll just work harder and make it happen. Or, to increase my income or increase whatever you're trying to do, I'll just go work harder. It's a constant battle to think differently. Continuing our series today in 10X is easier than 2X on your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. This will be a brief segment, but I want to keep going on this. I love this book. It did challenge me in a number of ways, and want to dive into how it's challenged me and what has changed and how it's made me think differently, right? We talked in the last segment on how we did that, right? How the podcast made me think that way. Obviously before reading this book, that was what was happening, right? But this has been a great reminder that I've not been thinking this way often enough. But we're going to dive in a little further today. Going 10X involves a continuous process of increasing the quality and decreasing the quantity of everything you do. So think about that, right? A continuous process. It's not a one thought and done, right? It's not a check the box and it's done even. It's a continuous process. And like I said, I have to remind myself constantly to have this filter like we talked about last time. And it's really a filter, what I find, that a focus, right? And focus is so crucially important to scale and to do big things. I was thinking about, actually, it reminded me, there's a story about when Warren Buffett and Bill Gates met. And I think it was a meeting that maybe Bill Gates' father somehow set up with Warren Buffett. I don't know the whole story behind it, but ultimately they met. You've probably heard the story about how, I think it was Bill Gates asked Warren Buffett, one word to describe his success or how he got there, or something like that. Actually, they both wrote down this word, a word, on a piece of paper, turned it over, and then they both turned their paper over and they both said, focus. So I don't know if you've heard that before, but man, I do believe there is a lot of truth in that, in being able to focus. And thinking through this book has helped me to, I think, focus more. And I have to continually remind myself, and I think you probably do as well. But, obviously, you've probably heard the saying too, how you do everything, anything is how you do everything. And, I think, personally, I struggle with that statement, but because there are some things that I'm not as particular about, but there's a lot of things I'm very particular about. So, maybe the way it's done, or the way a job is done, or expectations about different things. There's some ways I wish I was more particular about certain areas of my life or habits, whatnot. But shedding your 2X identity can be difficult, because as people, we have the tendency to avoid loss, overvalue what we currently own, and desire to be seen as consistent. So, I find often you're still surrounded, right, by those same people, or the same, those same expectations. And often they may not even be actual expectations of the people around you, but it's what you're assuming are the expectations of the people around you. And you're trying to still meet that expectation, right? And it may not even be a true expectation. And it may be at times, but often, it's because, you're not changing, right? Who you're surrounding yourself with, and, who are those people that are at the level that you're trying to get to, right? And we've talked about that so many times on the show. How are you working on that and changing that? And so you are shedding that 2X identity, right? But you're ultimately surrounding yourself with people that are 10Xers, right? That are not just doing it, or not just thinking it, but actually doing it, right? And I think thinking it is the first key. Your identity is the story you believe about yourself and the standards you hold for yourself. So what do you believe about yourself? So, where does your confidence come from? And I hope most of you know this, but the Lord is my confidence. And I have to remind myself of that also, right? He's been faithful every time in the past, forever. And there's never been a time he has not been faithful. And so I against what every most self-help books and entrepreneurial books would tell you, or 10x books or 100x books or whatever, when they're trying to get you to think that way, right? They're going to tell you to love yourself, believe in yourself, all those things. Well, I think most of that is, there is a lot to the mindset there, but it's, I think, baloney, because the Lord is my confidence, and He is the only reason that I've been able to do any of this stuff in real estate and have the stamina to keep going. It is only because of Him. But I quickly feel like I can do it on my own, right? And move away and quit thinking about, man, the Lord is my strength and my help. So I hope He's yours as well. But defining and choosing your own minimum standards, no matter how seemingly impossible to yourself and others, is fundamental to experiencing a 10x transformation. So think about defining and choosing your own minimum standards. What is that for you? Have you been purposeful enough to even think through that, much less write some of those standards down? And to have it, almost reverse engineered, right? How to get there. We've talked about that as well. But how do you do that, right? Well, start thinking about it, right? And maybe by the end of the week, you're going to write some things down, right, around that specific thing. So the standards you believe. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but that you believe others have for you, right? It's a hard part to think through or to move away from. Others project their standards on your whole life, and eventually you have to be willing to not care, right, about what others think or about it. And you have to set that standard for yourself. And if you're still around the same friends you had in high school, there's a good chance that they're not thinking this way, or maybe they've not pushed to grow themselves in this way. And so you have to think through, man, what is pushing you? Who are you surrounding yourself by? It is so important. I've seen it personally time and time again. And I've had to, I've been a part of masterminds where, I've kind of outgrew them, right? But they were really good for me at that stage, potentially in my growth and in my entrepreneurial journey. And I actually have met, there's guys that I was in a mastermind with 6 or 7 years ago that when we met, we were at very different levels. This guy was, when I was thinking of one guy specifically, way ahead of me. And I just talked to him a week or two ago, and he's still way ahead of me, but we've both grown a lot. But neither of us are still in that mastermind, right? We found other places to keep growing, to surround ourselves with people who are way ahead of us, right? And it is a continual thing of looking and searching for those groups, those people who are going to mentor you and push you and are going to help you to raise your standards, right? Your minimum standards are going to go higher and higher and higher. I hope they do anyway. Evolving yourself to the level of a higher minimum standard requires commitment and courage, which eventually leads to the development of new capabilities and confidence. No doubt about it. That's exactly what happened, right? I went to this mastermind. I met all these people. All of a sudden, I'm encouraged. I'm creating different habits in my life because of these people. I'm reading different things because of these people who are pushing me in different ways. I'm performing in different ways in the business because of the things I'm learning, things I'm being pushed by, right? It's affecting not just me, but my entire family, all of our employees, and right. So it's changing a lot about who we are, because of raising that higher minimum standard, right? Taking that courage, right? To do that and committing that level of commitment to raise that standard. So it's crucially important. And then we're going to get in a little bit here to what's called the 80-20 principle, right? You've probably heard of this. If you've not, I encourage you to look this up. We talked about it even during maybe in the last segment, but man, it's worth thinking through and the tasks that you do. So Jimmy Donaldson's 3 ingredients to his 10x process are: number 1, thinking exponentially and linearly bigger, right? Number 2, hyper focusing on quality over quantity. And number 3, building a team to handle the 80% so you can focus and improve in your craft, right? So think through that, building the team, right? Delegating the 80%. And I would ask you, do you even know what the 80 and the 20% are? Like what is involved in that for you. And one tip I often tell people, even some people I've mentored, it's always an issue of time management for myself as well. It always has been. It probably always will be. It's a fight, right, to keep my calendar, as minimal as possible, right? So I'm still keeping what's most important, right? Being at home and with the kids, spending time with the kids and my wife, and being involved in our church, and those things that, it's so easy for me to quickly fill my schedule up so fast and so much that the most important things, really the reason, right? We claim we're doing all this stuff for our family or kids, whatever. But if they're really that important, right, we're going to make time for them as well. You're going to see that time commitment also. But I ask you to guys often, or that I've mentored, is like, what's in your 80%? And this week, let's start writing things down. Like throughout the day, what have you done? What are you working on? What are you doing? Right? Or do you know? Most people have no clue. And then we're going to talk through that 20%, right? What is that 20%? What is that thing that you love to do, right? That you are passionate about. And let's dive in there on those skills. Even that, we're going to start to cut up into 80-20, right? And start delegating as well. So we can get hyper focused, right? Like we've talked about. 10X goals are easier than 2X goals for many reasons. 10X goals are less competitive. Yeah, less competitive. There's so much there we could talk about. 10X goals require you to focus on very few things rather than many, which improves your brain's ability to focus. Research shows that continual task switching makes flow and high performance basically impossible. 10X goals promote nonlinear approaches, which produce novel and competitive free or competition free solutions. So finally, 10X goals foster leadership and teamwork, wherein you stop doing everything yourself, managing others, or here's a big one, needing to be right. So that's a big one for most leaders, especially when you're so focused on 10X, or if you're that kind of individual, you can think you're always the right one. But if you're going to 10X, guess what? You better understand you're going to be wrong often. And it's good. Not that you're wrong often, maybe, but that you're trying enough that you are wrong, but also that you're surrounding yourself with a team of people that are doing that 80%, maybe even part of that 20%. A lot better than you, right? And so hopefully you are wrong in ways that you're pushing forward, right? You're pushing hard forward, hard enough that you're making some mistakes. However, you're surrounding yourself with people that can come along beside you. And I've done this and have to do it. I have to know that people around me are better at what they do than I am, because that's why I hired them, right? And that's what I need them for. I want them to be so much better at these things than I am, right? Creating 10X results doesn't require you to be 10X better than everyone else, right? Even being 10 to 20% better and different from everything else can produce 10X bigger results than even the outliers of a particular niche or field. So again, I hope this is just encouraging you, pushing you to think differently, right? To have a 10X focus. It's very different thinking. It's a different way than most, and probably most of us were raised to think. We'll try to continue this series. I hope this is encouraging to you. Would love to hear from you. Please email me at info@lifebridgecapital.com. Would love to hear what you would like to hear on the podcast. What is it that you're struggling with in your business right now? What would you like to know more about, whether it's commercial real estate, syndication, entrepreneurship? I would love to know so we can provide that content for you, and open to any suggestions that you have, or guests as well. Have a blessed day.